Okay, I'm going to call this meeting to order. Will you join me with the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We get a roll call.
Absolutely. Councilman Rao?
Present.
Councilman Leonard?
Here.
Mayor Rao?
Here.
Councilman Laverie?
Present.
Councilman Fitzsimons is absent today.
Is he going to be here? Do you know?
He said if he had time, he would get on Zoom, but he's at a basketball tournament, so he might miss out. But we have a quorum, so we are good to go.
Okay, are we in compliance with the open meeting law?
We are in compliance.
Okay. Public comment. Do we have any public comment related to the items of the agenda below? In consideration to others who may also wish to provide public comment, please avoid repetition and limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes. Do we have any public comment? Yes, sir.
Thank you for hearing me. My name is John Houston, And there's only one item on this agenda, and so that's what I'd like to address. The land that's being considered for sale tonight belonged to the United States government, was administered by the Bureau of Land Management, and sold by them to the city of Caliente. One of the inducements in that regard was the representation made by the city of Caliente that none of this land would ever be sold outside of a competitive bid circumstance. My comments tonight I have provided in the form of a memorandum to all of you. And so I'll just proceed on that basis. The money to buy that land from the United States government did not come from the city of Caliente. It was provided by the United States government itself, specifically the United States Department of Commerce, Economic Development Administration. You have a partner. And while I understand that the total funding under the EDA grant was not completed, and so that the funding was terminated, you have a partner. And the documents and agreements for the money that was used to acquire this land and then later improve it with the cul-de-sac and the water and the sewer is still outstanding. And the EDA has a right to approve, prior to the entry of any contracts, any alienation of the property, any transaction. And I don't suppose that this council has contacted EDA and suggested that it desires to sell real estate involved in the grant. More than that, still outstanding is the issue of zoning. Now, when I spoke previously, the city attorney cited a provision of the City of Caliente zoning ordinance, 1521404E, that he opined on the record and professionally to allow the killing of 50 animals a day, their evisceration, and cutting and packaging for human consumption. That is the Webster's Dictionary and the Black's Law Dictionary definition of a slaughterhouse. He called it agreeable under that provision, 15214.4E, as a packaging process or facility.
Sorry, John. Steve, the 3 minutes is up.
Okay, your time is
Can I, my wife would like to speak. Could I have her 2 minutes?
yes.
Okay, thank you. In any event, shortly thereafter, it was determined that the city attorney was using the old 1997 zoning ordinance and not the current 2015. In any event, the current zoning ordinance provides that slaughterhouses is an ag use subject to a conditional use permit and does not appear as an industrial use. It is a stretch. It is a misrepresentation to consider that this facility would be anything other than a slaughterhouse, even if it then packages the meat. And then lastly, CC's and R's with regard to and the purpose of this industrial park prohibit specifically slaughterhouses. A lot more research obviously needs to be done with regard to sewer and water and all the rest of it. But specifically, I would hate to see this council welch on its representations to the BLM and to also violate EDA situations without an in-depth professional view of circumstances that might result in the total call and repayment to the EDA of the funds.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for your comments. Do we have any other public comment? We got anybody online?
Not anybody asking. There's no comments or chats, so.
Okay,
Did you have a public comment? or-
Hi.
Okay, just want to make sure.
okay, we'll move on. Items for discussion, possible action of the city council, approve or deny Jim Bourne's Battleborn Butcher Block LLC's request for purchase of APN numbers 013-140-13 and 013-110-414.3673 acres.
So, I think you're reading from an older agenda. The assessor parcel numbers shouldn't be on your agendas.
Okay, well, that's what's on my agenda.
The ones that we posted publicly didn't have parcel numbers on.
Oh, I see.
Well, that was the first one before.
For the
break.
purchase of 3.673 acres, and that's what's on the agenda. Okay.
Good evening. If possible, I did provide some information in regards to the letter. I have not seen the letter that is referenced in this memorandum, and has it been submitted to the city and the city council?
If the council wants to discuss, I can discuss those matters either before or after Mr. Bourne brings up his land contract, if you'd like.
The question I have is the land patent from the BLM to the city has no conditions, no recorded conditions, no conditions of the sale. Regardless if the initial letter between the city of Caliente and the BLM had spelled out certain letters of intent, obviously the final negotiation and the final determination between the BLM and Caliente did not contain any competitive bid or right not to sell, and I've provided a copy of that as well. As far as the EDA goes, that whole agreement was terminated per the request of the EDA, I believe, from the letter that's written. So any conditions on the transfer of that sale have been terminated. I've included the letter signed by everyone, including the government, that shows that that EDA has no bearing or whatsoever on the sale of this land. So those two things don't apply. It does say in here that as well that that I stated that we are not a slaughterhouse, and yet it still says I stated we're a slaughterhouse, all in the same sentence. We're obviously a harvest and processing facility. The USDA does not refer to things as slaughterhouses. The USDA, who oversees the harvesting of animals, calls it a harvest facility, and that's what we've all along represented this to be. Little concerned about the use of terms like fraud, things to that effect. So I wanted to make sure that it's clearly on the record that we are a harvest and rendering facility or an abattoir, depending on how you want to look at it. Slaughterhouse is a very outdated term, and at no point have I ever represented that this was not a harvest and rendering facility. That being said, there's the only other outstanding issue to reference from this memorandum are CC&Rs, which I have a copy of as well. CC&Rs are not a government entity document. They're made by developers or owners of property.
I'm sorry, Mr. Bourne, I'm going to pause you right there. Apparently, we did have someone who wanted to make public comment.
And wasn't able to be heard. He
And
just messaged me, so I'm gonna go ahead and.
So can we
turn it
pause you
on.
for a minute and do public comment real quick?
Okay.
Especially if it's going to be about this issue.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I apologize. Ask to unmute.
Hi, thank you very much.
Sorry about
My name's
that.
Maureen McDonald. I'm sorry?
Oh, I just apologize for not hearing you when you tried to get on earlier.
Oh, you know, it's Zoom, right? So thanks for letting me be heard. I just have a comment. I'm a new or newer resident to the city of Caliente. I'll tell you that I do work for the BLM, but I'm only speaking on behalf of myself as a resident. And I just heard about this project yesterday. It's very distressing to hear about it as a new resident. I love that the town is based on tourism and we have 50 some miles of trails for hiking and people pack the city on the weekends for recreation. And I think that that will all go away if this project goes forward. Not only that, I had the intention of buying property in Caliente. And if this project goes forward, I have no incentive, not only to buy anything in Caliente, but to build or stay, because I do not want to be by a business like that so close to town. And I don't think anyone else, if they know about it, would feel the same way. Thank you so much for letting me speak.
Thank you. Okay, I'm so sorry, go ahead and.
Oh, absolutely, no problem. CCNRs are for developers or builders who own property. And prior to any of the properties being sold, CCNRs can be revoked completely, changed, amended, replaced, absolutely at will and whim. So the CCNRs, as far as, that's not a government regulation, it's not zoning, it's what the owner or a developer of a property and land do. Even once 51% of that property is owned by someone other than the builder or the developer, at that point, the owners have a right and a vote to be able to amend, change, revoke, or remove the CCNRs, up to the point where the builder, developer, owner is at 5%. So the CCNRs are not zoning, they're not codes, they're nothing other than what an owner or a builder has proposed and can be changed or amended at any time. That's about all I have other than the contract, if you guys have questions or comments on the contract.
So, yeah, first of all, the city of Caliente was given a patent on the land. And so the city of Caliente owns it in fee simple absolute without any restrictions or anything else like that. Just to be the same if we got a mining patent or anything like that. It's the city of Caliente in fee simple absolute. So we're the only owners. No right, title, or interest is vested in anyone else. We own it outright. Mr. Bourne is correct about the CCNR. The CCNR is a self-imposed conditions, covenants, and restrictions. And what that does is Mr. Bourne is right, is if we're developing that land and people are buying that land, we say you have to abide by our CCNRs. And and under NRS 116.2117, it allows you to amend and change those CCNRs, as long as you have, and the case law is different in a lot of places, but as long as you have 50% ownership, you can make that change. And then the people who would have standing to fight those amendments to the CCNRs would be landowners in that CCNR district, is what I would call it again. So I guess this is the way I'd say it, if Mr. Bourne put up right now and he bought this land and we agreed to this sale, and 2 years down the line, we say we're gonna change the CCNR to prevent something you're doing, Mr. Bourne would have standing to sue us under that CCNR because he bought that land with an understanding of those covenants, conditions, and restrictions. But since we are the only owners of that land right now, we have the final say whether or not we want to amend that CCNR. And it does say, Mr. Houston and Ms. Cole are correct, the CCNR does prevent animal slaughterhouses from being in there, but it would be as simple as putting on the next city council agenda to amend that CCNR and re-record that with the Lincoln County Recorder's Office. And that's on page, so if you're on the CCNR, it's book 207, page 140 under 3.6.11 on the CCNR. And so that's the discussion about the CCNR. Regarding zoning, so again, Mr. Houston and Ms. Cole are correct. There was a 2015 amendment to the zoning ordinance. And I didn't have it at the time because I didn't know it existed, but I have been made aware of its existence and I took a look at it. And so under the ag on page 24 of the amended zoning requirements, under the ag section, it does say uses permitted subject to special use permit. And so it does allow animal slaughterhouses in agricultural areas. And so it says that. But, and just like any construction of statutes or laws or anything else like that, just because something is allowed in one place doesn't necessarily mean it's disallowed in any other place. And on page 31, under the industrial zone, this is what it says of the industrial zone. The purpose of the I zone is to provide areas where industries necessary and beneficial to the local economy may locate and operate. I zone is intended to provide for the development, and there's a typo here, of agricole uses which do not in their maintenance, assembly, manufacture, or planned operation create smoke, gas, odor, dust, sound, vibration, smut, or lighting to any degree which might be obnoxious or offensive to persons residing in or conducting business in either this or any other zone. And so what the city of Caliente has done in their 2015 amendment zoning is made the definition of what belongs in an industrial zone very broad, okay? So the question is, I know that there's been discussions and Mr. Houston and Ms. Cole have objections regarding possible smells and things coming from the meat packaging facility. And if that's true, that might violate an I zone. If this council finds that to be true, that the meat packaging facility will create an obnoxious odor that would interfere with businesses in Caliente, okay? But the I zone in our definition is very broad. So as I was taking a look at that, and he'd still need the special use permit, it's required like any other business in the city of Caliente. So since ours was very broad, I started taking a look at other meat packaging facilities in other areas and to see where they are zoned. And Mr. Houston and Ms. Cole are correct. There are many areas where meat packaging facilities are zoned for agricultural use. But there are also many cities and many municipalities where meat packaging facilities are also either in light industrial or general industrial zoned areas as well. And so just to say that they only belong in agricultural or they only belong in industrial is incorrect. There are different municipalities, different governments who either put them in industrial or agricultural. And so I think my feeling again is that the industrial zone under the 2015 amendment that was brought to my attention is broad enough to allow a meat packaging facility in our industrial park, in our I zone. If this council decides that the meat packaging facility will create obnoxious odor that will prevent businesses or that will interfere with businesses in the city of Caliente, then you should, I guess, vote your conscience and do what you feel is right at that point, whether or not it violates our I zone. Yeah, and I believe those were the three matters that were brought up by Mr. Houston and Ms. Cole regarding the CCNR, the zoning, and the land patent is what I'd call it. So if you have any questions about that, I'm happy to answer those questions.
Nobody has any questions?
Wouldn't it, I just wanted, I asked this before, but I still think it'd be almost fair to put that up for public, like a public bid. Expect at that rate is so cheap that
I understand.
they're just handing it over to Mr. Bourne basically with nobody knowing anything.
Under NRS 268, which is the disposition of government lands, I guess is what I'd say, there usually is a competitive bid requirement. And a lot of times the competitive bid requirements require 2 appraisals and then to have a bid process. There's a specific statute we mentioned in the last meeting. It's, I'll pull it up real quick, that directly discusses 268.048 that discusses industrial parks within cities who are in counties with less than 15,000 population. And it allows you to bypass the competitive bidding process. Regarding the price, and Councilman LaVerry, I agree. I mean, $23,000 for 3.673 acres doesn't seem like a lot of money. I've talked to the county and they're doing a very similar thing with their industrial park down in Alamo. and they're actually selling it for a little bit less. And when I say a little bit, quite a bit less as well. But if you look at the document provided before regarding the purpose of the industrial park, and I don't have it pulled up right now, but it specifically says in there that the point of the industrial park is not to make a profit off of anyone, it's not to make money, it's to invite businesses to come because the belief was that the tax base, the employment, would be more of a benefit to the city of Caliente than the money we would make off the land.
Any other questions?
Do we have any idea what kind of revenue this is going to bring to, this business would bring to the city of Caliente? Has there been any estimates done as to what the actual economic benefit to the city would be?
We looked into, and I talked to Mr. Katsky and regarding the sales tax. Lincoln County and Caliente both, because I would ask, there is a equation, how they figure out the taxation. The problem with Caliente is we do not bring enough sales tax in to even meet the minimum threshold. So as the governor's office actually told me that Caliente is what they consider to be a welfare city. In other words, until we have enough businesses and enough sales tax to reach that minimum amount, other counties and cities are subsidizing us with that sales tax. So until such a time where Caliente is encouraging businesses and doing things with the industrial park that we can be bringing in additional sales tax, there's very little benefit from the sales tax. Even in the first year operation, which is a third of our operation, it's about $1.5 million in payroll. So if you look at all of the statistics that show that in a community, for every dollar in payroll paid, $3 is made by the city and the owners of the businesses in the city. So that'd be about a $4.5 million swing in Caliente.
And Councilman Hunter, what he's referring to, I don't know if you're aware, but we're a consolidated tax state. And so that's what he's referring to, is that all sales tax gets consolidated in Carson City and redistributed.
I guess I got a question for you, Mr. Bourne, too, is,
Yes.
we've already really kind of approved this. We've already kind of approved this moving forward on the lease agreement.
Yes.
But I was gone for a couple meetings and out, and the lease agreement just isn't kosher, I guess, to.
Well, we needed to collateralize the loan at the land, and the city then didn't feel it was in their best interest to
Right.
have a collateralized land. And it was brought up that the county is selling out of Alamo in their industrial park land, and this is allowed here as well. I did check with them, and it is considerably less that they're selling the land for. We have no problem with the offer that we put forward. We're going to be putting a $2 million worth of building and equipment in there and paying a lot of money out. So besides that, one other thing to answer the question here is that I believe right now it's 5 cents per kilowatt hour that Caliente gets above county power.
A little more than that, but yeah.
Okay, so our power usage is pretty high there, and so a considerable amount of money will be coming back in from the electrical use, and we obviously intend to be growing and working forward on that.
And does this change up some of the agreements we made in the lease as far as like, I'd have to go back and look at it, but we were gonna share the cost with putting in the infrastructure out there now that Mr. Bourne's the owner, that kind of should change that up to.
So he did put an Exhibit B on the sale agreement that incorporated a lot of the terms from the lease. And that's under Exhibit B, 1, 2, and 2A and 2B.
My opinion on.
Power being brought in, three-phase power being brought in, and us paying for 50% of that is going to be able to bring power into all of your facility. And industrial, with us paying 50%, it will actually incentivize and help bring other businesses in.
Yeah, I'm just curious,
Yeah.
so we're keeping the same.
Yeah, pretty much the same thing, just it's a purchase versus a lease.
So where I kind of sit on that side of it is, you just mentioned that you're putting a $2 million facility in.
Mhm.
At the end of the day, it's going to cost the city of Caliente about $30,000, roughly $40,000 for the surveying fees And these fees that you're asking the city of
We're
Caliente
paying
to
half of
pay,
the survey fee, yes.
yeah, you're paying half, but the city's gonna end up with about $40,000 wrapped, 30, 40, whatever the number may end up being, invested into this. It's a very minor amount of a $2 million facility. It doesn't seem like that should be a part of the terms. When it's a lease, it's a different story. We still own the land, you're investing on. There's some benefits there for the city of Caliente to maintain that and keep that. And so, okay, we can make that investment, but now we're selling the land and we're helping you to improve this land and make it.
It's
When
actually,
it's a benefit
it's
to you.
improving the whole industrial park, not just my lot.
But it's there. I mean, the survey fee is 100% only related to your property.
Right now, we have almost $1 million in, and we are getting a loan for another $250,000. We have a grant that's matching funds for $250,000. Every month that we're not open, we're spending about $10,000 a month. And if you're aware of any startup businesses, yes, we're putting an awful lot of time, money, and effort in, and we don't have an awful lot above and beyond. We originally were going in at Adam Katsky's location, doing a mobile and portable facility, and we were looking at about $700,000. Now we're looking at about $3 million. So yes, we're trying to do this, but do we have $40,000 today to throw down? No, we've been doing this for 6 months, so.
And I'm just kind of concerned altogether about the terms of the contract that I'm seeing here. The real estate deal throws, you say that you're in a hurry to get these things done, but yet in here it says that you want 180 days to even break ground. You want to have that ability and have it
That was
finished within 10.
requested by Councilman Rao to be put in there, not me.
And so then why didn't you say, well, then give me 90 days? I'll have it done in 90 days.
Because I was asked to put in 180 days, and that's what I did. I'll tell you that within 30 days of this closing, the slab work will be started. And if you wanted to make that a condition of the sale, I have no problem with that.
I'm just not comfortable with the city putting out money when our budget's already super tight. I mean, when we just went through the budget process, we saw how tight we were on the city of Caliente. I mean, our auditor was very clear, you guys are just barely scraping by. And to invest that, I know that the money's gonna come back at some time, but I'm just not comfortable with the facts of those things. There's a lot of terms in this real estate agreement that I'm not comfortable with. Looking at the terms of it, it's a very generic, for lack of better terms, a very generic contract, in my opinion, of where it goes. It's just not the due diligence, having 15 days to go there. You should have proof of funds immediately to show that I mean, it's $22,000. I know that you're running, but a business of this size, that should be negligible. And to say, well, we got 15 days to get proof to you, it should be pretty well within a couple days.
This is a standard contract that's used on 99% of the vacant land sales that are done in Clark County. And it's just filled out, just like we discussed when we were meeting with people. If you want proof of funds tomorrow, I can pull up proof of funds and show you on my phone right now.
Okay. And buyer's due diligence has 30 days to do his research. We've been working on this for how long? And yet you want 30 more days to go through this and make those things. I thought it was a very generic form of contract and kind of very loose, not very tied down, in my opinion, on it. That's my biggest thing, and I'm still not comfortable with the city paying the fees when you own the land, when you own it outright. When we ask somebody to move to the city of Caliente and they decide to start looking here, one of the things that we've done is we used to ask them to pay their utilities. It was like 10 grand worth of fees. We asked people, hey, you want to move here? You're going to pay 10 grand to build your house. And here we're saying, hey, we're going to pay you. We're going to pay half your fees to get you to move into this property because we really want to give it to you. I'm just not comfortable with that.
Well, we've had businesses in the past come into town and the city fit the whole bill, period. When they put the dollar store in down here, they never charged them 1 penny for any of that stuff.
For any of the utilities?
Nothing.
As an incentive to
put the store in here.
And I do concur with, like, it is starting up the industrial park and getting it off the ground, so I mean, I just was kind of curious if, and I agree with Mr. Hunter on it too, it's kind of a double-edged sword, I guess, but
Yeah,
it is
and
the
that's
way to
where-
get it going, you know, and kick it off.
And I seem like I'm negative towards this. I've been very positive towards this whole thing during the whole process. And I'm just kind of trying to process it. And I've had a short notice. I mean, I didn't get this paperwork until about 4:30, 4:45 today. I didn't get any of this paperwork to see any of it. And so we're being asked to make a pretty big decision with very little. None of this was in our hands until we walked in basically to this meeting today.
And just so you know, Councilman Hunter, I got it Sunday before last, and I emailed it to the negotiating team. And I understand that you probably didn't get the packet till earlier this afternoon, but it was provided to the negotiating team about a week and a half ago at this point, so.
And I do believe the other documentation, I just got when he brought in, but the land lease agreement was sent out with the, agenda, I do believe. Did you guys all get it when the agenda went out? Oh, I'm so sorry, the purchase agreement. Yes, thank you.
So and then I got one other question, I think I maybe asked this earlier offline, but if we sell this to Mr. Bourne, and then Joe's tire shop wants to move out there, how much control does Mr. Bourne now have over the industrial park where he's an owner of a piece of land in there?
I mean, as long as we're abiding by our zoning regulations, we all have private property rights. So other than the 3.673 acres that he would own,
His
the rest,
piece, and-
the other 72 acres still belongs to us. And I mean, he would just have any right that any other landowner would have if there was a nuisance or anything else.
I would have a vote on it, but it's commensurate by the CCNRs based on the total acreage divided by acreage of ownership. And I believe it's 105 acres, so they're about.
75. Oh, you're right, it's 105. I think there's.
So I would have
30.
3% of the vote. So you would have 97, I would not have any say. Now, Mr. Katsky is right. If there was a total change that precluded me from doing the business I was in afterwards, and you guys changed your mind and changed the CCNR and said we couldn't do this, I would have standing. But as far as any other business going out there, I would have just what you guys would have, except you own 97%, I would own 3%.
I guess some of my questions are just coming because I thought the lease agreement was pretty sweet, you know, and I guess, you know, maybe it don't work exactly for you and it's better to buy it. That's where
One of the
I guess
things,
I was hung up a little on like, I thought, you know,
Absolutely.
for both parties, I guess it was a pretty
Yep.
fair deal to get that thing going.
and that's where I kind of felt, kind of where I started taking another look at this, is I felt like we gave you a very fair deal on this. We left it to Franklin, some terms there to negotiate those. And the report came back that you felt that the city was negotiating in bad faith. And that you were throwing dirt at the city for negotiating in bad faith. And I don't believe that was the case at all.
Wow, I don't believe I was throwing dirt at anybody.
And this is what I'll say, just, Mr. Bourne and I have had a lot of heated conversations that happens during negotiations. I don't think there's any love lost between us. It just happens, okay? And I wouldn't say negotiations broke down, but we just kind of came to a stalemate, and that's what happens. And then the negotiating team and Mr. Bourne and his team felt it was in the best interest to go forward with the sale, I guess. There was, what we presented to the city council about a month ago was good, but then there are a lot of other, I guess, hiccups along the way that just not make it impossible to do the lease, but just put both parties in a position, well, mostly put me in a position where I didn't feel it was comfortable for the city to enter into that lease. And so dirt gets thrown, I guess, in hard negotiations. And saying that, again, there's nothing, no animosity between myself and Mr. Bourne. It's just, it's what happens during
It
negotiations.
was business, we were
Yeah.
negotiating. And as far as the negotiating in bad faith, I believe I did send Mr. Katsky that, and I did tell the council that I met with, when we have an agreement, and it was my understanding that the only thing we were putting up to finalize was the length of the lease. And then I was never given a copy of the lease until Thursday at about 3 o'clock, was not notified that there was a council meeting that evening, was not given an opportunity to be here. And then the lease was totally changed, not the term of the lease. There was no rent, now there's rent. There was collateralization, now there's not collateralization. It was a major change in the lease without representation and me being able to at least be here to represent the company. I don't believe in a million years that Mr. Katsky intentionally or anyone on this council intentionally did that. It just was the way it came down. And we tried to fix that and we came to a meeting of the minds and found that this would probably be the best. I would still prefer the lease. But we would need the collateralization of the land. And the city, and quite frankly, I can see 100% where the concern would be with that. At which point, we started looking at Alamo and the industrial park and what the county's doing and what Elko is doing and a few other localities in Nevada are doing with their industrial parks. And we came back together and said, well, we can make this work with the purchase. We did come with an offer that was substantially higher than we could go into Alamo at. And Alamo would provide the free phase power to the site at no cost to me. So we've tried to be fair. We've tried to make it work for everybody. And I believe that we found a really good win-win for the county, for the city, and for us as well.
Well, I haven't said anything yet, but I guess it's about my turn. I got a copy of this, 8 or 10 days ago. Whenever you got your first copy, I got a copy of this. I read through it, not being an attorney or a real estate person, I didn't understand a lot of it. I immediately got a hold of the director of our Lincoln County Regional Development, Jeff Fontaine, and I emailed him a copy. And he started going over it, and he's done a lot of work on this. And by the way, I would like to make a special thing, public announcement, that we sure appreciate Linda's work on this and all the research she's done on this for the Houstons and for the council and for Jeff. And would you personally thank her?
I would, I
Okay.
would.
Anyway, I've been talking with our city attorney, and I've talked with Jeff Fontaine several times, and everything seems to be a go, that there shouldn't be anything wrong with this stuff. I've talked with the BLM out here, the lady that's in charge, Shirley. She happens to be here today. She said there might be a couple of little kinks, but it's nothing that can't be corrected. And anyway, we didn't like the lease that was first put out after we got to checking over, because we didn't want the city to be responsible for any loans that he would have that might not be good. And that's what would happen if he put that land up for collateral. So that's why we decided to sell instead of purchase it. That way we get sales tax from it. We'll get, or not sales tax, we'll get property tax on it, and the building and everything that's on that. So that's where I am right now.
Guess I just got one last question. If, say you want to sell that, what did we have? Is there something in here on that? Like say Mr. Bourne wants to sell it in 2 weeks for,
1.5 million.
yeah, I was about to say $1 million.
I mean, that's the risk you're taking. It's his property
His
at the
property,
time.
do what he wants with it, and
And there's no
and
way
there's
to put
nothing
a
you can put in there
self-imposed.
like on the contract or
We could
stipulation.
put a right of first refusal, but it would, usually those rights of first refusal say that we would have to purchase at the price that he's already contracted to sell it at, right?
We could do an addendum to it, that you have a first right of refusal to purchase it back for the price paid for a period of 2 years.
But it's just like any other real property transaction is it's a total split, no longer belongs to the city of Caliente. We have no rights to it is usually how these things would go down.
But
And
it-
and I've talked, sorry,
Go ahead.
I've talked to other city attorneys, I can't think of the name right now. No, kind of out west a little bit more. Anyway, and I talked to them about their industrial park, and they do the same thing as they sell. And that's just kind of, because I talked to him about the leases as well, and he just said that the leases never worked out for kind of the same reasons that that we have talked about tonight, and the leases just never worked out, so they sell their land, and we just have to, as a city, we just have to make sure we keep an eye on it. And so anyone else who decides or desires to go out there, if he sells the land to a chemical company that's going to emit obnoxious odors, at that time, we can still refuse a conditional use permit for them to run a chemical plant. So the power is, we still have the power in our zoning laws to prevent certain businesses from going up.
And it still remains industrial park.
Correct.
Yeah, there's no way changing that or.
Right.
Very small.
Ken?
I have listened to this, and I've had Mr. Moore tell us that he has a verbal approval to do we won't call it a slaughterhouse anymore.
Closer to your mic, will you?
USDA does still call it
But
slaughter.
where I'm going with this, and it's already been brought up by Mr. Laverie, what happens if he cannot get authorization from the appropriate government agency to do this project, to open a business there? Then where does that leave the city in this program? I mean, he owns the building. At that point, he can do whatever he wants to with it, because it's his building. He's invested the money in it to do it. So I think that's something that we should consider.
You're saying as far as like everything, it fails, then
Well,
we're
if he-
just
if
stuck
he
there
never
with
gets
him
a-
being a landowner in our industrial
If I
park.
did get the
If he
FSIS
never gets,
approval,
yeah,
At
if
which
he never
point-
gets approval to put in a,
we would obviously
That's not
change the
fine.
use of the building and come back to the city council for a different business license.
Something.
yeah, same thing you brought up, in essence. But we've heard all along a lot of verbal, yeah, we can do this, we already have approval, but we've never saw an official governmental approval of this project.
There will never be an official government
Well,
approval
I-
until the
I-
building is built.
I understand
And they
that
send an
totally.
inspector out and walk
Until you
through the
get
whole
ready
building.
to make your application. Then that's where I'm going. What happens if you don't get it?
Well, I think that the first right of refusal for the cost paid, you know, that, hey, it gives him an out. And it does, in Exhibit B, he points out, that, look, he's got to get this done within 365 days, or he pays us $500 a month for every month that he does not meet those terms. And so he has covered it, but I think that to protect the city, I think that first right of refusal is kind of an important.
But for the money,
Document.
for the money that we're talking about, $500 a month, is nothing.
So the other thing we can do on that regarding the power is we could put a deed of trust on the property for, after we pay all of our expenses, get the 50% of that, require him to sign a deed of trust over to the city of Caliente, so we can secure our loan, I guess, to Battleborn Butcher Block.
As long as it was subrogated into second position.
And that's something, yeah, we'd have to discuss.
I'm still
Could
not.
see that end up being a real high dollar piece of real estate, you know? But I get it. I mean, we gotta do something to get the park going too, and I get that point. It just seems.
I'm not ready to make a motion in any way towards this. I'm still not comfortable with the terms as they're laid out. I think that we're putting the city there. I'm just still uneasy about it. the paperwork doesn't appease me overall. I'm not happy with all of it. And I've been supporting this from the beginning, saying that I wanted this to come in. I think that it was a good thing that the city get involved. But I'm really second guessing myself on it. In this position, so.
He's not comfortable with making the motion. I will make that motion then, that we approve Jim's Battleborn Butcher Block request for the purchase of 3.673 acres within the city of Caliente's industrial park.
With the addition of a right of refusal, or?
Right, right. They'll put that in there.
I'll second Tommy's motion to approve the sale of the two Battleborn Butcher Block of the 3.67 acres. With the first right of refusal.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve this sale to Battleborn Butcher Block with what first right of refusal put in there. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do we have discussion in between there?
Yeah, sorry.
I was gonna say, I think there's a room for discussion there. One of the things that I'm gonna make a statement on is I don't believe that we have seen any proof of any kind. Nothing's been presented to prove that this is a viable business option, that there is anything to guarantee that this is actually a go on these kind of things. I don't think Mr. Bourne, I've never seen an actual real business plan of how this is getting funded, what he's going to do. He's talked a few times about he's gonna slaughter some animals. And by the way, it does state in the USDA does not, I can't find anything. I typed it into Bing while I've been sitting here. Harvest and rendering facility does not come up as
I
a,
actually have it on my phone. I can,
the USDA refers to it as listed slaughter and rendering houses. And so I just typed it into Bing, hit it there. But I haven't seen, you know, like we pay for Family Dollar because we know that Family Dollar is a business that is a multi-million-dollar corporation, and they say, hey, we want to come here. We want to guarantee that we're going to do business, and you know that they're going to follow through on their promise. That's where I'm kind of unsure on this, is you
you
said,
know, the city has been given a business plan. The University of Reno, Nevada also has a feasibility study that's available online. Both of them, the University of Reno's feasibility study shows that right now that they are highly encouraging and it's highly profitable to go to smaller regional harvesting facilities. And if you go to ams.usda.gov, under animal handling and welfare, it's called All Animal Harvest Facilities. And it talks about abattoirs and harvesting facilities. So the actual USDA site, the FSIS, that is the one that licenses harvesting facilities.
yeah, the APHIS,
So
because that's where I found the slaughter and rendering houses. That's where it comes up, is the aphis.usda.gov. Listed it as that, and so that was just interesting to me. Minor detail on that.
but they had, a business plan was given.
Okay.
And as you could see by, I believe, the JBS hack that raised beef prices by 50%, these massive places that are doing 1,000 to 5,000 animals a day and killing them. When one of those gets hacked or gets shut down, what happens to the availability of food and food supply? So besides the money to the community, you have one of those happen again and you have a meat harvesting and packaging facility here, our meat's not going to be unavailable and it's not going to be twice the cost.
So you're looking to sell locally and provide?
We are selling locally at our grocery store, at Panaca Market. We've already spoken to Silver Cafe and a number of other people. So yes, we will be. This is a community-based company.
Vote. We're waiting to this get over with, this discussion.
I think I'm done with my discussion on it. I think I'm there. So what was, you gonna take the vote?
We had a motion, a second, and all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much, I appreciate it. Mr. Katsky, do you want to get together with me? Do you want me to just email you an amendment, or do you want to
Yeah,
draw
just
that?
email me some language on, and just add to that.
First right of refusal?
Yeah, and then I'll take a look at it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do we have any public comment?
We will have one. I'm gonna go ahead and unmute her. She's already asked ahead of, oh, go ahead if you wanna finish.
We do need to get back onto the agenda for a special use permit for the.
So that is a 10-day business process because we have to send out the conditional use permit letters, but I will have Linda start that process tomorrow.
If you need anything from me, just email me. Thanks, Amanda.
Okay, I will email you the application that I'll need, and I'll email that to you tonight, Jim.
You got it. Thank you so much.
So I'm sorry, we did have another public comment. If you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, you can go ahead and go with your public comment.
Hi. So again, I'm a fairly new resident of Caliente, but I'm just wondering, does the city not have any public participation and review process for a project like this? Or environmental analysis? Do you have any idea what the impacts on the environment around the location are going to be? And you mentioned opportunities for competitive bid. Was that even considered? I mean, it just doesn't, it seems like it's being rushed through and that there has not been a lot of scrutiny of both the financial and environmental impacts of this project.
I'm sorry, I will state that they cannot answer your public comment, and that's why they're
Oh.
not speaking. I'm so sorry.
Yep, this is just a comment section.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know that. Okay, well, I guess I'll have to do some research on my own, but myself, like most of the community, are going to hear about this after the fact. And I think that there's going to be some disappointed folks. Thank you.
Any other public comment? If not, we'll move on. Scheduled date for review of agenda topics for our next meeting.
So our next meeting is gonna be the 8th. And right now we have a business license on there. We have a couple of room tax agenda items. We'll have a room tax meeting earlier that day for them, and then we'll have that on there. And then we'll have a conditional use permit. So, so far, that's all I have, but of course, if there's anything else, just let me know, and I'll get it on there.
Anybody needs to be put on the agenda for our next meeting? Okay. Then I adjourn this meeting.
What's wrong with the pool?